Follow the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago on Twitter. Our call sign is @TTParliament.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we willingly acknowledge you as the supreme being, most gracious and most merciful. Look down, we beseech you, on us who are members of this Senate, and deign to assist us in the duties that we have to perform on behalf of our beloved country of Trinidad and Tobago. Open our eyes to see the truth and help us to accept it with all its implications into our lives. Direct us, O Lord, in our deliberations, so that setting aside private interests, unwholesome prejudices, and personal affections, we may treat all matters set before us with honesty, courage, and conviction. Through all we say and do in this Senate, may we give glory and honor to your holy name, inspire confidence in our fellow citizens, and make a positive contribution to the peace and prosperity for our nation. Amen.
Announcements by the President.
Honorable Senators, I have granted leave of absence to Senator Alison Bash and Senator Wade Mark, both of whom are out of the country, and to Senator Saddam Hussein, who is ill. Honorable Senators, I have received the following correspondence from His Excellency the President Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona, ORTTSC. The Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, by His Excellency Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona, ORTTSC, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. To Mr. Ronald Huggins. Whereas Senator Alison Bash is incapable of performing her duties as a senator by reason of her absence from Trinidad and Tobago. Now, therefore, I, Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona, President as aforesaid, in exercise of the power vested in me by Section 44(1)(a) and Section 44(4)(a) of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, do hereby appoint you, Ronald Huggins, to be temporarily a member of the Senate with effect from the 26th of October 2017 and continuing during the absence from Trinidad and Tobago of the said Senator Alison Bash, given under my hand and the seal of the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago at the office of the President, St. Anne's, this 25th day of October 2017. To Mr. Jabez Joshua Selford Johnson. Whereas Senator Mark is incapable of performing his duties as a senator by reason of his absence from Trinidad and Tobago. Now, therefore, I, Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona, President as aforesaid, in exercise of the power vested in me by Section 44(1)(a) and Section 44(4)(b) of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, do hereby appoint you, Jabez Joshua Selford Johnson, to be temporarily a member of the Senate with effect from the 26th of October 2017, and continuing during the absence from Trinidad and Tobago of the said Senator Wade Mark. Given under my hand and the seal of the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago at the Office of the President, St. Anne's, this 25th day of October 2017. To Mr. Jwala Rambarran. Whereas Senator Saddam Hussein is incapable of performing his duties as a senator by reason of his illness, now therefore I, Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona, President as aforesaid, in exercise of the power vested in me by Section 44(1)(b) and Section 44(4)(b) of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, do hereby appoint you, Jwala Rambarran, to be temporarily a member of the Senate with effect from the 26th of October 2017 and continuing during the absence of the said Senator Saddam Hussein by reason of his illness. Given under my hand and the seal of the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago at the Office of the President, St. Anne's, this 26th day of October 2017. Honorable Senators are required to take the oath.
I, Ronald Huggins, having been appointed a Member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, upon which I am about to enter.
I, Jabez Johnson, having been appointed a Member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, upon which I am about to enter.
I, Jwala Rambarran, having been appointed a Member of Parliament, do swear by Bhagavad Gita that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, upon which I am about to enter.
public business, government business, bills, second reading.
Honorable Senators, the debate on the second reading of the following bill, which was in progress when the Senate adjourned on Wednesday, October the 25th, 2017, will be resumed. A bill entitled An Act to Provide for the Service of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year ending on the 30th day of September 2018. The list of those who have spoken in this debate is as follows. On Tuesday, the 23rd of October 2017, Senator the Honorable Alison West, Minister in the Ministry of Finance and mover of the motion, Senator Wade Mark, Senator Torrell Shriki-Soon, Senator the Honorable Clarence Rambarran, Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, Senator Dr. Danishwar Mahabir, Senator the Honorable Franklin Khan, Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, Senator Anita Haynes, Senator Stephen Creese, Senator Nigel De Freitas, Senator Paul Richards, Senator Daniel Duque, Senator Dr. Lester Henry. On Wednesday, October the 24th, 2017, Senator Saddam Hussein, Senator David Small, Senator the Honorable Paula Gopi-Skoon, Minister of Trade and Industry, Senator the Honorable Dennis Moses, Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs and Minister in the Ministry of National Security, Senator Melissa Ramkisoon, Senator the Honorable Rohan Sinanan, Minister of Works and Transport, Senator Gerard Ramdeen, Senator Sophia Chote, SC, Senator the Honorable Faris Alwari, MP, Attorney General, Senator Alison Bash, Senator Obika, Senator Foster Cummings, Senator Avinash Singh, Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries. All members wishing to join the debate may do so at this time. Senator Roach.
Thank you, Madam President. I may just wish to add a few words to a quite robust debate that has taken place over the last 3 days concerning this budget. First of all, I just would like to extend again warm congratulations to the opposition senators and the government senators who are newly appointed. In particular, I would like to say a few words concerning Senator Alison West, the Minister in the Ministry of Finance, a colleague, attorney at law, someone who I have known for some time, and has distinguished herself firstly in the public service before turning her efforts into the private sector, and now has returned to do public duty. I know that her work has been of the highest standard wherever she has gone, and I think having her in the Ministry of Finance is a great asset to us, to our country. I know she's a tax expert, and certainly will be seeking the interests of Trinidad and Tobago. So welcome, Ms. West. Madam President, so much has been said before the commencement of this debate in these chambers, elsewhere, outside of these chambers, and almost every aspect of it has been reviewed, turned over, stripped apart, and put back together. So I do not think there is much in regard of the nitty-gritties of the financial numbers and so forth that I will comment on. But basically, I would like to share a few words on my concerns on the policy of the government. I would like to extend congratulations to the government again for putting together the team of government officials who will have participated, a lot of them faces we will never see, in making this budget another fruitful or successful one to bring it for our scrutiny. It is a budget that is supposed to guide policy of Trinidad and Tobago for the rest of 2017-2018. To the ordinary man and woman in the street, the technical things that are discussed in the budget sometimes may go over their heads. And so I will try to keep my contribution to what I want to speak as very simple.
Honorable members, we have been through this time and time again. Will the senator with the offending device please leave the chamber, and you can return in 10 minutes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, Madam President, I sit and I listen to the debate and the focus of the government. The government, of course, is tasked with a very difficult one, which is to present a budget that will cater for all of Trinidad and Tobago. It is a it's a challenging time we are in, that we all are becoming more and more aware of it as the information becomes more available, that the resources that were available to us before, over the last decade or so, and certainly over the last 7 years, is no longer available to us. And therefore, we have to be much more prudent in our financial affairs in the country. Certainly, the government is tasked, they undertook to take the responsibility of guiding us through these difficult times. It's a government that I said in many of my contributions that if the government succeeds, all of us succeed. And I'm willing to say I would like them to succeed. We all have our role to play. In times of good and plentiful and abundance, we all participated in it, some more than others. And in the times of difficulties, we also have to share in the burden. I know it's not an easy task to try to please everybody. You can never please everybody. You cannot please everybody all the time, and you can only please everybody sometimes, if at all. But having said that, I think some of the focus, I have a little bee in my bonnet when it comes to, first of all, my situation. I'm the only differently able person in this parliament, consisting of 30 members, or as it is may be. So I feel as though I'm the lone soldier batting on behalf of the others who are absent from here. And that for the time I've been here, I have been lamenting on the progress that I think will have been made here, first as an example of creating an atmosphere that I may feel more welcome and equally treated. That is still absence, notwithstanding that some effort has been made in trying to make my tenure here one that is reasonably accommodating. But still, I'm dissatisfied with what has been done. If I go outside the chambers, as I said, and you go in the wider community, it is still woefully inadequate for differently able persons to get along in our society. And they also can have a very valuable contribution to make. You may be differently able from your neck down, but there are some of us who walk around here who are differently able from the head up, from the shoulders up, you know. And I think that as a caring society and as a society that is progressing and modernizing, we need to take this a lot more seriously in making the necessary policies and also implementing the necessary legislation, and set an example that our society could quickly come up to speed with what is required in the 21st century in dealing with a society that is all-inclusive for even the differently able and the poor and so forth. Trinidad and Tobago is a society, I'm not sure, because of the lack of reliable data from our, we have a CSO. I don't know what has become of the CSO. The last time in the budget there was a CSO, there was a team that was put together assembled by the Minister of Finance in modernizing and equipping a new CSO. I don't know what has become of that, because I know in making determinations of your policy, reliable information is very, very, very necessary. I don't know what has become of that. I would like to hear something on that. Because in order to move forward, we need to know what exactly we are doing. We can't act on VAPs. We can't act on emotions, and we can't act on ignorance. We need to act on credible information that is reliable. There is always a difficulty between what is produced by the Ministry of Finance in terms of information, financial information on the status of the economy, as well as coming from the central bank. So that is something I think that I hope will be addressed by the minister in her wind-up. What is the situation with our CSO? Because listen to one of the contributions of one of my friends to the left, Senator Small, which was quite enlightening to me, is that I think it was necessary as we chat and we try to inform the public, the government tried to inform the public that resources are challenged because of the decline in revenues. He was able to inform us that figures of oil prices in the 90s and the hundreds and so forth was an exception to the rule. That was not the norm. I mean, I don't want to say I was not, I lived outside of Trinidad to understand that, but that was credible information. I don't know how many people outside really appreciate that fact. That is a significant fact to understand that given the spread of oil prices over, what, a decade or two, it was usually around in the 40s and the 50s, and the 30s. So to have something as in the 50s, revenue in the 50s, is quite a healthy one. It's not an unhealthy one to say that we have decline, as he said, to put it. And if I'm misquoting him, I appreciate his correction, that the price of oil circling around 50-something is not really a perilous state of affairs. Am I right? Yes. And therefore, I think we as a country have to readjust our thinking, our expectations, that the new norm may be around that. And as we talk fancifully about innovation and engaging in new diversification of the economy, which has been going on from time immemorial, little has come to fruition where that is concerned. And I have looked over the last week intently. I've been looking at the People's Republic of China in their 19th conference. I've been looking at them intently. China is coming, taking its rightful place as probably the new geopolitical leader, as America is seeming to recede and take the opposite direction in every aspect. I also found myself reading the budget, the 2017 budget of Canada, and also recently again had my eyes trained on the Saudi Arabian situation. And what I took from them that was interesting for us is that they are all dealing with innovation. They're all dealing with technology, smart, what is it called, smart technology. They all are ramping up their societies geared towards science and technology and moving forward. Saudi Arabia, in the case of Saudi Arabia, they have put aside, I think, something like $500 billion to start a new hub in Saudi Arabia to take away their emphasis from relying on oil to something else now. And they are the largest producer of oil, exporter of oil in the world, which is very interesting. In the case of Canada, our closer neighbors, Canada, in their budget, in the presentation by the minister in March of 2020, earlier this year, he spoke about making special effort in attracting internationally young minds who are disposed to science, technology, and mathematics. It is the way they see in moving and continue to have Canada placed as a cutting-edge modernized society. And I think this is what we, Trinidad and Tobago, in dealing with our challenges that we are faced now economically, we need to make that type of adjustments as well. We need to have a lot more focus on science and technology in moving us forward. We were pioneering when we introduced liquefied gas. I think we were the first nation to do that. Everybody have now caught on. So we will have had the first beneficial. We were the first to benefit from such an endeavor, such a scientific advancement, right? And I think we need to continue in that vein in trying to recalibrate our society and our economic revenue sources, and taking us out of this little dark period that we are experiencing in terms of downturn in available resources. I look at some of the budgeted items that the government, the minister had shared with us concerning, in particular, the Ministry of National Security. And I said I'm not going to talk on everything. Just talk on things that I believe are very close to my heart. Over the last decade or so, I saw something like $3.8 billion. So 8-point-something billion has been spent in the Ministry of National Security. And I do not think, and this would have probably spread over 2 different administrations, and yet still we have not been able to grapple successfully or reasonably successfully with the crime situation in Trinidad and Tobago. It is a fundamental concern for us in order for businesses to strive and any endeavor of reasonable living and attracting business in your country. You have to believe that the environment in which you're going to operate on is one that is safe and secure. And I think that a lot of the money has been geared towards the end product, which is we trying so much on the aspect of trying to fix rather than to prevent. And I have been an advocate for one in spending much more money in the social services and strengthening families, the family sector, the schools. having social workers, more social workers, and probably we should have policemen at this point in time, you tell me, because certainly policemen are doing a good job in keeping the bandits from, and you know, what we have in our society right now. And I am urging the Minister of Finance, through you, Madam President, that if at all you're going to tweak anything out of that budget, if any difference is going to come, is that instead of, again, pledging and allocating, is it $6.8 billion to the Ministry of National Security, that, about that, if $500 million extra could be given to the Ministry of Sports, the Ministry of Sports, there's on page 50, on page 72, I think of it, you speak about sports and activities. Just give me a second, please. Yeah, on page 72, Madam, of the budget speech, the budget statement, the Minister speaks about plans to focus on 3 major revenue-generating areas: sports services, sports events, and sporting infrastructure. Now, I happen to visit the Hayes Crawford Stadium, as well as the larger complex, the what is the complex name again? The Hayes Crawford Stadium and the Jean-Pierre Complex. Thanks, Jean-Pierre Complex. And it is woefully in a dilapidated state. It's woefully unkept. I mean, and if you go along there in the afternoon, there's a large number of young people that go down to that institution, to that facility, to practice sports from various schools and the community, the wider community around there. And it's, to me, is a disaster. It is shameful to see that. So I do not know how we're going to boast about infrastructure. It's not just putting up the new infrastructure and then forgetting those infrastructures that are already in use that can be refurbished, equipped, and put it back in proper functions. I have been asking since about 4 years ago. I've been to the inauguration of the president, and I was not being able to accommodate to be in the stadium. I wasn't able to go in there because there was no means, there was no elevator or anything for me to get in there. That is 4 years, 5 years, or we're going into 5 years now, and the elevator has not been repaired. Still has not been repaired. I don't know how much money it's going to cost to replace or put in a new elevator there. You talk about elite athletes. There's a gym for elite athletes. When you go into that gym, you cannot use the elite athletes gym right now. You know why? Because it's full of mold. I was told recently this week that it will take about $100,000 to clean it and refurbish it. You are exposing your children, you're exposing the children of the nation, you're exposing your coaches to go in there and work there and to end up being ill. What is the end product of that? If you're in the United States, it's only you sue the government. This is unfair. This is not right. Some money must be allocated in order to fix these things. These things are low-hanging fruits. They don't require no gigantic pledges. It is a simple thing that needs to be done. So is it apathy? Is it indifference? I mean, I don't know what it is. I have tried to speak to the Minister of Sports on more than one occasion. Do I forget him? I see him very often taking pictures as he come back with a gold medal. He presents himself. I would like him to present himself in the stadium with somebody with some cement or with a road paper, paving some roads, and get it developed, and showing that something is being done to prepare these very same athletes that you want to pose with at the end of the day. And it's not a joke. It's not a joke, right? It's not a joke. I feel very peeved about it because I do not want in any way to embarrass him. But since I cannot get him, I need to talk to him here, right? And I'm talking on behalf of all those persons, all those people who have their children going down there, including my daughter that goes down there and represents Trinidad and Tobago. You want to get the best, but you're not giving them the best opportunity, best facilities to do what they're doing. That is not right. It is not right. So that is something I would like the Minister and the Prime Minister to take on very seriously, because I know he's a person that is interested in sports and have the welfare of his community. And we'd like to see Trinidad ambassadors, male and female representatives that have been doing for this year with distinction. When you go abroad, people don't ask you who's the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, or who's the Minister of Sports, but they ask you who's Brian Lara, who is Dwight York, who is Arthur Boland, and they never ask me. I got stopped by a police. One day he wanted to know, where your accent song, where you have this strange accent. I was driving making a turn when I was supposed to make a turn. And this white cop stopped me. Stop. You're violating. And I said, what? He said, you're not supposed to be there. You're not supposed to be in there. You're supposed to be on this. I said, officer, I'm really sorry. He said, that accent, where is that accent from? He said, from Trinidad and Tobago. He said, what? Dwight York? Baron Lara? And that got me away from getting a ticket.
Yes, that's it.
I got away from a ticket. He said, I wish I got separate, to talk a little long. But, I mean, really and truly, I mean, I tried not to make it too severe. I'm not going, this is not, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm not trying to be, to disregard whatever the government is doing. But I'm saying these are some things that sometimes if you're on the ground and you are face-to-face with it, these are some things I would like to highlight that need to be addressed. And I hope that the next time, the next budget, when it's come to, I'll be saying something praises about it. I'll be saying, well, we have one of the best ministers of sports because he has rectified these things that has been woefully unattended to for so long. So, Madam President, I know a lot has been said about the different taxes that have been raised by the government. We need to get money somewhere. That is true. And it cannot be just tax, I know. But the taxes, some of the taxes that have been imposed, I've heard some people saying they are justified in these circumstances. And as a matter of fact, I thought the Minister of Finance was going to raise the online tax to about 20% because people seem to deal with that quite easily. And it's something that you won't visit you if you don't buy. So it's not a coercive tax. If you want to buy, you pay the tax. That is something I think I was expecting to come. Now, having said that aspect of it, we all must pay our fair due in terms of taxes, but at the same time, also there must be accountability for the collection of taxes. There must be accountability how you disperse with people's hard-earned taxes that they pay. And there's a gulf between collection and the responsible disbursement of our taxes. You have heard successive governments speak about the pilferage, the misspending on all sides, and yet still, as my learned friend, as my friend here, Senator Spaulding, would like to say, nobody cut a jail yet. Lots of money has been gone mismanaged. We are in a small country, and I always question why it is a country with 1.3 million people with disposable income and sometimes a budget of $60 billion. What do we have to show for it? What do we have to show for it? I travel extensively, and I'm telling you, compared to other Caribbean countries, which is not a fair comparison, we are well advanced of them. But compared to other countries with less resources than we have, better managed than we are way behind. We don't have, our roads are not first class, and we have pitch, we have all the things here necessary to make our roads some of the best roads you can get. I was away South Africa for a month. I drove there extensively for a month, and I didn't come across one pothole. I drove from the stadium to my home in Maraval, and I count 21 potholes. Well, I started counting when I came out of the stadium. If I count the stadium, I get probably about 40. Right? So it's to tell you that something is wrong. And that means something is way wrong, because you will see efforts being made by the Ministry of Works or whoever to pave the road. The road paved today, and by tomorrow morning or a week after, you see the same hole with the pave, and it's sunk. So it means something is not going there, something is going there that's not supposed to be there. Either it's inferior material, either it's short material, or something is there. So there has to be a level of corruption in that. Because where's the accountability? If I have paid you to repave the roads and they are not properly paved, within a week it deteriorates into a state of disrepair again, something is wrong. Who is responsible for that? We all are responsible in this society. We have to reflect, first of all, as individuals, the change that we want to see. We cannot just leave it up to the government or the police, as the case would be, to police your children. We have a responsibility. We have to start being what we want our society to be. And simple things to help us to achieve the type of paradise that Trinidad can be. Madam President, I do not want to lose focus on the roads, as the case may be, and so forth. But I am saying that the government, I'm hoping, will provide some sort of a light, guiding light to the society. Because we do need, at this point in time, we need innovative thinkers to help us to meet the challenge that we meet successfully. We need the encouragement. We need a government that we can trust. We need a government that we know that even in difficult times, that what they're going to do or what they are doing is trying to get all of us out of a situation of challenging circumstances, a more prosperous and reasonable state of life. I commend the Minister of Agriculture, who I have grown to have a lot of respect for because I think his heart is in the right place. I think he has done quite a bit with what he has inherited to take it to where it ought to be, because agriculture is very critical in our society. For too long, agriculture has been a basket case in most ministries. In most other developed countries, agriculture is a significant ministry. And if we can start by being able to feed ourselves, that is one of the ways of tackling this foreign exchange, forex difficulties that we have, because we are now a significant importer of all our needs in terms of food and other services. But I think if we can certainly get the agriculture sector motivated and on the right keel, I think we can solve a lot of our problems, beginning with some things like that. I was looking at a program again, so I'll be looking at the Chinese conference this week, and the president, President, he lived in a number of communities around China as an agriculturist, laborer, they build their leaders. So he understands what is poverty. He understands what is necessary, what is required to take China where it is. And he has now been raised to the level of Mao Zedong in terms of respect because of what he is doing for his society. And he's taking society. What? Geopolitics is changing. And I'm sorry that the Minister of Foreign Affairs is not here, because I think in tackling our difficulties now, foreign affairs ought to play a critical role in our present circumstances. Geopolitics is changing, and no longer is America the leader, the moral leader, or any leader at this point in time in commerce and marketing. We have China, we have India running close behind, and we have Russia, and a forgotten place. I know it's because it's at the bottom. But my friend, my recent appointed Senator Obika, who had the opportunity, who had the privilege to live in Africa, I think for 3 years or so he lived in Ghana, he can tell you about the abundance of opportunities that lie on that continent. And if you look at what goes on the African continent, you look at America, you look at Europe, you look at all the major, including China and India, they are all in Africa. In a big time. When I first went to Africa in 1994 in South Africa, you didn't have a Chinatown. 5 years after, you have a massive Chinatown. And they have an embassy and a consulate huger than the Red House that is still under construction. That's to tell you the importance that they place in Africa, the opportunities that lie there. We have a lot of synergies. We have natural synergies that we can build on immediately. I can tell you that. So when we focus our attentions all into what I call the marginal markets, which is North America, the traditional markets, we will spend a lot more to eke a little advantage. So if we had 8%, we just probably might get 0.5%, 9.5%. But when you go down to a yawning opportunity like Africa, there's a lot to get. There's a lot. You can start off getting 60, 50, 70%. And they want to do that kind of thing. They want to deal with the people from the diaspora. They want to see of their own kind. They want that type of synergy. So I think the Ministry of Foreign Affairs got to get very active and start dealing with that. I'm sorry, I hope his colleagues will let him know what I'm saying. Well, it's good to hear this, right? So I'm saying, Madam President, through you to the government, that foreign affairs ought to become very much more aggressive in looking at alternative markets, looking at the opportunities that lie there, the connections that already and foundation has been laid over the many years through good relationship with leaders, that we can put ourselves there and be able to build and maximize the opportunities. In terms of our services, in terms of education, in terms of twinning, the universities. I mean, when you go to a university, you don't just only go for an education. You pick up a lot of cultural, social, and a whole host of other things. There's a big spin-off to come from that. I think so. There are a lot of areas in which we can work to bring about that. Trinidad, during my time in 1995, I was trying to promote that South African Airways and BWA at that point in time, do a code share to have people being brought from Africa to Port of Spain and then go, because South African Airways used to come over Port of Spain to drop off in Miami. So if you could have Trinidad as a point of full stop, there are lots of persons that are going to South Africa now. A lot of people are going into South Africa. Realize it is now the flavor of the last 5 years since President Mandela, even though his demise, unfortunately, right? And so if Trinidad can have start up and we do a stopping in South Africa, from South Africa to Port of Spain once a week or twice a week, we again will attract tourists, serious tourists. Because we need to break that sort of, as I call it, the trade triangle, which you have to go to North America or Europe and come down here and come back there before just doing across here. Going from Port of Spain to South Africa is 8 hours. Going to London is about 9 hours or so. And then going from New York is about 14 hours. And then you come back down. So you can cut all that out and come directing and be goods and services. Your goods and services. I just, one of my friends just gave me an avocado, a zabuka. The zabuka big like this. I've never seen a zabuka like that in South Africa. If I go in that South Africa, I don't think it's a diamond. Their zabukas are this small. And they use the avocados throughout the year. They're small, they're rough, and they're not as flavorful as what we will get in Trinidad and Tobago. That's another opportunity. That's a massive opportunity there in terms of agriculture. So, Mr. Minister of Agriculture, there's an opportunity down there. Also, recently, when I was down in South Africa, I realized that goat, the Arabs, they import a lot of goat from Zambia. I don't know if it's because it's kosher, but there's a lot of goats, and they pay something for a goat, I think between $100 to $300 for a goat. We could get into goats here. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity. So these are opportunities. These are things that's right there for us. You know? But, Madam President, before as my colleague who is not here today said in his contribution when he was winding up, he doesn't want to detain you any further. I too wouldn't like to detain you nor the rest of the chambers any further with my ranting. Okay, but I do want to give the government the encouragement that they listen to the contributions that have been made. I know all politics aside, there are certain contributions that have come from many persons, many senators inside here that I thought had merit in it, excluding the political banter that ought to go in helping to make your management of the economy for the next year a little better. I know that you, as I said before, you cannot please everybody, but I know the effort is there. The effort must come out. People must feel that you are trying to please everybody, even though it's not possible. But if you do err, you err on the side of doing what is best for Trinidad and Tobago. Madam President, with that, I thank you very much.
Senator Rambarran.
Thank you, Madam President, for recognizing me to join in this debate on the 2018 budget. At the outset, let me state I'm grateful to the political leader of the United National Congress, Mrs. Kamala Persad-Bissessar, for giving me this rare privilege via this appointment to the Senate to make a contribution in this honorable chamber on the 2018 budget debate. I would like to congratulate Mrs. Persad-Bissessar on her budget response in the other place. She condemned the 2018 budget as an act of terror against all citizens, one that traumatized the country and betrayed the trust of the people. I must also congratulate the leader of opposition business in the Senate, Senator Mark, and my other UNC Senate colleagues for their well-researched and excellent contributions to this 2018 budget debate. They all pointed to the growing inability of the Rowley-led PNM government to present new ideas to fix the problems facing our country. Madam President, quite frankly, I too found the 2018 budget to be uninspiring, underachieving, and it left me unimpressed. As an economist and citizen, I am disturbed to see the direction in which our country is heading under this PNM government and where we could be within the next 3 years. As an economist who started working at the central bank more than 25 years ago and went on to become its governor some 5 years ago, my journey as an economist has actually paralleled our country's economic journey. From one of our lowest points at the end of the 80s to now, I have seen the growth of our precious foreign exchange reserves from $0 in 1987 move to the highest level ever of $11.5 billion in 2014 under my watch as central bank governor. It took 27 long years to build back up our stock of foreign exchange reserves to its highest level. And now, our reserves, the lifeblood of our economy, are hemorrhaging. That is why, Madam President, I stand here today. I have a vested interest in what happens to my country. It is my sincere hope, despite politics, those in government can move past pettiness and ego and listen, hear, and take action before it is too late for all of us. Madam President, I've observed the economic policy of this PNM administration is based on fear. It preys on our fear of ending up with our backs against the wall and our noses against the glass of the doors of 719th Street in Washington, D.C. That is the home of the International Monetary Fund. The dreaded IMF, in its first address to our nation on December 10, 2015, Prime Minister Rowley warned, and I quote, "If we fail to adjust now, we will find ourselves as we did in 1986, with an economy with insufficient foreign exchange reserves and having to restructure our debts under a series of IMF programs. This administration will not take this country back to that kind of situation." End of quote. Just over 1 year later, in his address to the nation on January 11, 2017, the Prime Minister said, and I quote, "Let me end by reaffirming my commitment that this government will do all that it has to be done to keep our country out of the grip of the lender of last resort, the IMF." Under the spotlight on Trinidad and Tobago's financial circumstances held just 1 month ago, the Prime Minister again sought to use one of our country's lowest economic moments to show his government is doing what is best for the country. He said, "In this period of significant decline in foreign exchange inflows, it will be unreasonable and dangerous to use up our foreign exchange reserves as we were accustomed to. This would be paving our way into the arms of the IMF, and that is something this government is not prepared to do." Many of our citizens remember the trauma we endured in the late 1980s and early 1990s when we were forced into the arms of the IMF. Many public servants still remember the 10% cut in wages and salaries. Many persons still remember losing their jobs. And some still remember padlocking their homes and taking the keys to the banks because they could not meet their mortgage payments. And many of us in here all remember the exodus of our family and friends who fled, mainly to Canada, because they were looking for a better life. We basically forfeited our national sovereignty to an international institution because successive PNM governments failed in their duty and responsibility to our country. Prime Minister Rowley, early into his administration, has set this ominous economic benchmark of our country returning to the IMF. And I think he preys on our fear of being trapped by the IMF. He's using our traumatic experience as a benchmark for his performance as a prime minister and his government. His strategy? Set the bar so low and use the fear of that low point. So then anything a little higher is considered a win, and you come out looking like a hero. The Prime Minister is using the fear of the IMF to drive support for his flawed economic policies. We have to do this so we don't end up at 719th Street. He's dangling the IMF like the sword of Damocles over our heads. Madam President, I therefore find it extremely ironic that the economic importance of the Prime Minister, his army of economic advisors, and of course, the engineer turned economist, the Minister of Finance, is pushing us even closer into the arms of the IMF, rather than keeping us far away from the IMF dragon. Let me explain why I say so, Madam President. It's uncanny how there are three similarities about our situation today in 2017, which resonate with the late 1980s when our economy went into a tailspin and we ended up at the doors of the IMF. First, there's a new incarnation of the PNM in power. Second, our deteriorating economic conditions resemble those of the late 1980s. And third, we have the strange presence of a trinity of persons who continue to play leading roles in economic policy making. Let me deal with the political situation first. Back in the 1980s, the Chamber's PNM government was simply waiting for a crisis to erupt. They had gotten advice from William Demas, who headed a task force and wrote a report called The Imperatives of Adjustment since 1982. Yet every single recommendation made in the Demas task force report was ignored. And if those recommendations were implemented, this country would have been prepared well beforehand, since 1982, for the collapse of the oil market in 1986. And we would not have had to endure 7 consecutive years of severe recession, significant unemployment. The unemployment rate back then went to a peak of 22% as measured. 1 in 4 was out of a job. Food prices skyrocketed, and we had to implement harsh austerity measures. And naturally, a frustrated electorate would eventually vote out the PNM in a landslide defeat in December 1986, bringing in the NAR government, but they would have no choice but to eventually approach the IMF and the World Bank for funding and to help administer the bitter medicine of structural adjustment. Today, our collapsing economy under the Rowley-led PNM government shows up the glaring incompetence of an engineer playing economist, a prime minister who prefers economic geometry to economic strategy. And
Senator Rambarran, just have a seat. Again, I am always reluctant when senators are making their maiden contributions, but there are some words that will not, let's leave it out of this chamber, please, okay?
I'm guided, Madam President. I move on. Madam President, I didn't mind too much when the NAR government took away our apples and grapes. But this government is hurling us back into the Flintstone age. This brings me to the second similarity, the economic reality. Back in the 1980s, our official reserves were virtually exhausted within 6 years. There was not a single US dollar available at the central bank. Today, our reserves are hemorrhaging, falling from a peak of $11.5 billion in December 2014 to $8.5 billion as at September of this year. That's the lowest level in a decade. At the present rate of depletion, our reserves are expected to fall to about $3 billion by 2021. Think about that. Within the next 4 years, we will only have US dollars available to pay for 3 months' worth of imports. How could a country survive in that situation? Back in the 1980s, the fiscal accounts had moved from significant surplus into deficits averaging almost 10% of GDP. And it would take 10 years before the government will be able to regain some level of fiscal balance. And even then, that would prove fragile. Today, fiscal deficits have averaged nearly 7% under the PNM government for the first 2 years. And the Minister of Finance is overly optimistic that his fiscal deficit will be about 3% of GDP next year. But strange enough, he hasn't given us a timetable for returning to fiscal balance. So it's likely that this administration will run fiscal deficits for each year of its 5-year term. Madam President, back in the 1980s, our public debt mushroomed from 10% of GDP in 1981 to 56% of GDP by 1988. This meant that we could not service our debt and meet our international obligations. And we had no choice but to eventually undertake what is a most embarrassing situation for any country, to undertake a debt restructuring. And we had to do that under the auspices of what we call the London Club Group of Creditors and the Paris Club Group of Creditors. But the thing is this, we could only undertake that restructuring once we were inside an IMF program. It was not allowed to do it on your own. Today, public debt sustainability is a major issue. Our public debt now stands at over 62% of GDP. And the real question is, this money that has been borrowed in the last 2 years, what has it gotten us? Where are the real returns? Where are the benefits? Or are we simply borrowing just to artificially keep this economy alive? We've already experienced one major casualty of high debt. Both Standard & Poor's and Moody's have downgraded us, and they have warned of further downgrades unless we can stabilize the public debt burden. Madam President, this brings me to the third point on the third similarity, the trinity of economic experts. Back in the late 1980s, there were 3 persons who featured prominently in the negotiations with the IMF and in the actual monitoring of our IMF program. Today, those 3 persons hold senior positions in this administration. The first is Dr. Terence Farrell. He was the Director of Research at the Central Bank, and today he's Chairman of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Board. And let me say something. Despite all the negative things that Dr. Farrell has said about me, I still hold deep respect for him because he's the person who recruited me into the Central Bank in 1990 and introduced me to the world of central banking and economic policy making. The second person is Ewart Williams, who was seconded from the IMF to be an advisor to Governor Dimas. And he would, of course, go on to become a governor of the central bank. And today, he's economic advisor to the Minister of Finance. The third and last person in this trinity is Alvin Hilaire, who was then a senior economist in the central bank, and today is the governor of the central bank. Madam President, one would think with such esteemed economic firepower, this government would be firing on all cylinders when it comes to managing our economy. Yet, in 2016, we experienced the sharpest economic contraction in 33 years. Let me repeat that. Last year, our country, under this PNM government, experienced the worst drop in economic performance in more than 3 decades. And I do not expect 2017 to be any different. So it seems that the firepower of this economic trinity seems to be more smoke than fire. Or as the old people say, 3 Borats can't live in 1 hole. Madam President, let me explain why I think the PNM's economic strategy is not working. And the first reason is obvious. This government is ignoring the advice of its very own economic experts. Dr. Terence Farrell, writing in the Trinidad Express on January 3, 2015, outlined a 7-point economic plan to the then PP government on how to stabilize the economy in the face of falling energy prices. The government began to implement some of those elements of Farrell's plan, but demitted office 2 years ago. The question is, did the incoming Minister of Finance follow the advice of his own Prime Minister's Chief Economic Advisor? Let's look at the record. Dr. Farrell's 7-point plan was as follows. 1, act quickly and decisively and avoid the IMF. Instead, the Minister of Finance has failed to act quickly and decisively, and as I've made the case, we are moving even closer to the IMF. Second, he said, achieve external balance in the shortest possible time. Instead, our official reserves are depleting. Third, and this is extremely important, the stance of fiscal policy must be dictated by the requirement of achieving external balance, not vice versa. Instead, the stance of fiscal policy is based on generating revenue, not protecting our external position. The fourth element, fix the time frame for achieving external balance. This time frame should not be more than 2 years. Instead, 2 years have passed and we've achieved no external balance. His fifth point, the HSF should not be touched. Instead, the HSF has been raided twice so far. Sixth point from Dr. Farrell, monetary policy should cooperate by raising interest rates. Instead, the central bank has kept its policy rate unchanged for the last 2 years. The last interest rate hike by the central bank was done under my watch in December 2014, mere days before I was removed from office. And the 7th point that Dr. Farrell made, wages and incomes policy should cooperate. Instead, the tripartite agreement is in shambles and the trade union movement is ready to rumble. So, if the Minister of Finance continues to ignore the advice of the Prime Minister's Chief Economic Advisor, maybe he's following the advice of his own economic advisor, Ewart Williams. Let's see. Speaking at the Dimas Rampasad seminar series at UWI St. Augustine on November 14, 2013, the minister's own economic advisor offered 6 basic preconditions that must be met for economic diversification in a country like Trinidad and Tobago. First, a macroeconomic policy that ensures economic stability. Instead, the economy is in recession, fiscal deficits are large, public debt is rising, and our reserves are depleting. The second precondition, a high-quality physical infrastructure in roads, power, water, ports, and communications. Instead, our physical infrastructure is suffering with senseless budget cuts and poor implementation of the PSIP. Just look at the recent widespread flooding. Simple example. The third precondition, human quality capital, as reflected in the output of our tertiary education system, complemented by flexible system of training institutions. What do we have? Instead, gate has been cut, and the training institutions have lost their way. Fifth precondition, adequate investment in research and innovation, supported by both the public and private sectors. What do we have instead? Investment in research and innovation is negligible, near less than 0.5% of GDP. Fifth, a business-friendly environment that is attractive to both foreign and local investment. Instead, what do we have now? A plethora of taxes that would now hamper business investment. And finally, an effective, modern, and transparent system of governance. What do we have instead? Many of our important national institutions have come under assault. Just look at the central bank, look at the Integrity Commission, and look at the judiciary. After 2 years in office, this government has not met even one of the 6 basic preconditions for economic diversification put forward by the minister's own economic advisor. Madam President, apart from ignoring the advice of his own economic experts, the Minister of Finance does not have a concrete plan to stabilize our economy. Just look at the confused themes of his budget statements, a wish list of the latest buzzwords. Budget 2016, restoring confidence and rebuilding trust. Let's do this together. Budget 2017, shaping a brighter future, a blueprint for transformation and growth. Budget 2018, changing the paradigm and putting the economy on a sustainable path. There's no economic logic that ties together these 3 successive budget statements. The only constant among these budget statements is the narrative of blame Kamla, of which this country has become tired after 2 years. The PNM has ruled this country for 41 out of the 61 years since general elections were held in September 1956, squandering 3 energy booms in the process. Yet, blame Kamla is the only mantra that we can come up with to the many solutions and ills facing our country. We have no idea what milestones the Minister of Finance has in mind to restore confidence and rebuild trust. What are the milestones to regain fiscal balance, to stabilize public debt, to stop the hemorrhage of official reserves, and to bring the economy back onto a path of growth? Come tomorrow, we don't know where the exchange rate will be. We don't know whether we will have a job. And we don't even know if we'll be faced with another harsh tax. So why did the PNM announce in Budget 2017 it's going to build a blueprint for transformation and growth and then decide to change the paradigm in this budget? Where is the logic? Where is the economic logic? So the Minister of Finance is ignoring his own experts. He doesn't have a plan. He has not articulated a path to economic stability. What else could he be doing wrong? Well, the minister is implementing his fiscal policies at the wrong speed and in the wrong order. Madam President, what confuses me as an economist is how could the Minister of Finance and his army of economic advisors, when they were crafting the PNM's 2015 manifesto, fail to take into consideration the need to properly sequence and pace these economic policies. The Minister of Finance has introduced VAT on food, mixed it with a few dashes of higher fuel prices. He's attempted to introduce the controversial property tax. He plans to tax the life out of the gambling and gaming industry, and he's thrown in an online tax for good measure. What has happened? He's implementing all these taxes with a big bang effect, which means they are working against each other. They are canceling out the intended revenue benefits. It's no surprise. The minister continues to fall short of his revenue targets. But then again, he's short on logic, and his policies are short-sighted. Madam President, the Minister of Finance does not have barakat. Barakat is an Urdu word that many of the old folks use to describe the ability to earn wealth and to keep it. This government continues to show their hands are not blessed to create wealth. The result of not having any barakat is that the minister has shamelessly raided our HSF, our Heritage and Stabilization Fund. And while the conditions exist legally to access the HSF, borrowing from the HSF must be a last resort measure, not a first resort measure. Borrowing must take place only after significant expenditure cuts have been made and after all financing options have been exhausted. This has not happened. This government has drawn down $625 million from the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. That's more than 1/10 of the balances in the fund at that time. Think about that for the moment. It took about 4 years for the HSF to build up a balance of $625 million, and this has been consumed in 1 year. And by 2020, when general elections are due, it is quite likely this government could eat up 8 years' worth of savings from the HSF. Talk about having no barakat. And there's a whole question about the government says these drawdowns are from the HSF are going to use to finance the PSIP. But they're deliberately vague about what are these high priority projects that require this financing. The minister should tell the country whether our HSF funds were used to finance completion of the Brian Lara Stadium. What about the Prime Minister's house in Tobago? Will our HSF funds be used to finance the extension of the Churchill-Roosevelt Highway to Manzanilla, a project now mired in controversy? Or will our funds be used for golf courses? Madam President, maybe the minister could redeem himself in the economic management in another area, exchange rate policy, but I doubt very much. He and the new central bank governor are running down the country's reserves. They have unleashed a devaluation genie amongst our people, prompting fears that 10-to-1 is murder in this country. Since this government has assumed office, the TT dollar has lost officially 6.5% of its value. But on many foreign exchange transactions, banks are adding on a service charge that puts the selling rate at $7 to 1. And on the black market, the selling rate is at least $8 to 1. That means we have had a de facto devaluation of our currency by over 25% in 2 years. 25% in 2 years. How can this population adjust to that magnitude? The Minister of Finance, when he was wrapping up the budget debate in the other place, talked about expert syndrome. And in his October 2015 budget statement, the minister decided to revert to the old foreign exchange distribution system, and that would clear the backlog. Of course, we have seen that that has not happened. Despite reverting to the old system, and the central bank selling over $3 billion to commercial banks between January 2016 to September of this year, many persons and many businessmen are still complaining about who gets foreign exchange, how much they get, and when they get it. The sales of foreign exchange continue to be concentrated among the bigger business entities, the 1% super elite. And that is why I had made changes to our foreign exchange distribution system, Madam President, so that it could become more accessible and widely available. And those changes were made well in advance of the decline that would come in the commodity supercycle and the fall in global energy prices. It was meant to give the economy a time to adjust. Today, if those changes were made, everyone would have gotten an opportunity to more equitably share in our shrinking national foreign exchange pie. Instead, the super elite 1% business group continues to receive 80% of the US dollar sold by the central bank. And 22 months after my removal as governor, the blame for foreign exchange shortages have moved from blame Jwala to others. Dr. Terence Farrell, when he spoke on September 26 at the Arthur Lockjack, said, the foreign exchange availability issue is a self-inflicted wound by the government. That's your own economic advisor saying that. The Prime Minister, not to be outdone, at the TTMA award ceremony on October 3rd, said, foreign exchange hoarders are now causing the foreign exchange problem. And the Minister of Finance, in his wrapping up on the budget debate in the other place, went on to blame casino owners for leaking foreign exchange out of this country. So, as usual, they have no idea of the source of the problem. How can we solve the problem? Madam President, small island economies like ours require exchange rate stability, not exchange rate uncertainty, which we have now. And there's been a lot of textbook discussions about the need to rapidly depreciate our exchange rate. Any suggestion that we should do that is terribly misguided. Most of what we import cannot be produced locally. We don't manufacture laptops, we don't manufacture mobile phones, we don't manufacture motor vehicles or spare parts. And even if we did, many of these inputs would still need to be imported. Why are we harping on significant depreciation of our currency? And it's strange, Madam President, despite the uproar about foreign exchange shortages, no one has called on a new governor, Alvin Hiller, to explain why we still can't get foreign exchange. It seems it is only the minister who is doing the talking about foreign exchange. Somehow, the new governor is held to an imaginary standard.
Senator Rambarran, you have 5 more minutes.
Thank you, Madam President. Somehow, the new governor is held to this imaginary higher standard, and that his appointment seems to be more sacred than all the other governors. Yet his appointment has turned out to be the most tainted in the history of the central bank. Alvin Hiller is no sacred cow. Madam President, let me just say a few words about the sale of CLICO assets. The minister is dependent on the sale of these assets to almost close his budget gap. He's looking at $5 billion from the sale of CLICO assets to close the budget deficit this year. This is not a prudent approach. Why do I say that? Because the sale of CLICO assets is now mired in legal issues. The government has placed CL Financial in receivership. CLICO is under legal control of the central bank. CIB is in compulsory liquidation, supervised by the High Court. Ownership and sale of these assets is a legal matter for the courts to decide, not a matter for the Minister of Finance. The courts don't work according to the minister's schedule. And it is quite likely that the budgeted financing of $5 billion that is expected to come from the sale of these assets will be again delayed this year leading to a larger than budgeted deficit, and that it means the minister would have to borrow an additional $5 billion. Or, again, raid the HSF to finance its deficit. One more point on the sale of CLICO assets. I urge this PNM government to conduct itself in such a manner that it avoids any perception of a fire sale of these assets of CLICO, and that deals are being made to dispose of these assets to a select few. Because it seems this government has a warped sense of what constitutes openness, transparency, and accountability when it comes to the sale of these assets. And as I wrap up, let me ask these 6 questions related to the sale of CLICO assets. Was the January 2017 sale by CLICO of its Bucco estate in Tobago, more commonly known as No Man's Land, done in an open, transparent, and accountable manner? No. Did the central bank announce the sale of No Man's Land to the public? No. Was the September 2017 transfer by CLICO of almost 30% of its shares in Angostura to Corporation sold done in an open, transparent, and accountable manner? No. Did the central bank announce this transfer of Angostura shares to the public? No. Was the September 2017 transfer by CLICO of around 16% of home construction shares to Corporation sold done in an open, transparent, and accountable manner? No. Did the central bank announce this transfer to the public? No. Madam President, let me thank you for allowing me the opportunity to make my contribution to this 2018 budget debate. And I'd like to close with this last point. Just like the electorate called upon the NAR to rescue our economy from the PNM in the late 1980s, so too the political storm clouds are gathering, and the real paradigm shift will soon take place when the electorate will call upon the UNC in 2020 or even before to rescue them from the most incompetent, spiteful, and vindictive incarnation of the PNM yet. I thank you, Madam President.
Honorable Senators, let me congratulate. Honorable Senators, let me congratulate Senator Rambarran on his maiden contribution. Minister of Public Utilities.
Madam President, I feel privileged to stand before you today to make my first contribution in this House as Minister of Public Utilities in support of the 2018 national budget. As a proud citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, I also feel a deep sense of responsibility that comes with this opportunity to serve my fellow countrymen and women and to deliver results that will progress this country forward at a critical time when more is required with so much less. Madam President, there are times in the development part of a country when extraordinary challenges demand an equally compelling response. Trinidad and Tobago is now in such a time. That statement, Madam President, which I quote from the Vision 2030 National Development Strategy, is a powerful acknowledgement of the magnitude of the development challenges that we now face as a country. It is also a resounding testimony to the commitment of this government to confront this reality with skillful and level-headed determination. The economic situation in which we now find ourselves requires nothing less than a paradigm shift that the finance minister called for. A paradigm shift
in every sector and every level of our society, and by each and every member of the national community. The change must condition every aspect of how we conduct our lives in this country. The philosophy underlying the government response insists that all share in the burden. And if I might add, it also requires all of us to own up to the part that we have to play, that we played in creating this situation. I cringed when I heard the young Senator Hussein, in his maiden address like mine, talking about corruption and deficit budgeting. But then I stood here today and I heard even a more illustrious new senator coming into this chamber and talking about deficit budgeting by the P&M, like if this is something that he has never seen before. The reality, Madam President, is that we are here because of the reckless spending of the UNC-led government over the period 2010 to 2015. At a time when oil prices average US $100 per barrel, we incurred expenditure that reached as high as $63 billion, the majority of which, as we are now seeing, was spent on financing overpriced projects and engaging in activities which were currently brought to the public's attention by my colleague, the Honorable Stuart Young, Minister in the Ministry of Agriculture, which I will not elaborate, but I'm sure we all read about. Madam Chairman, when you look back and we talk about deficit, we talked about over a period, there were certain, and we talked about some advisors and strategic advisors, and we went ahead, our learned senator, our senator on the other side, talked about the advisors that the PNM have. During that critical period, when the country had abandoned a lot of money, all the advice that that particular government got was to spend, 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 and more spend, and thief, 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 thief.
And build jacuzzi in your face, what?
Madam President, during that time...
46-4, Madam President. And 46-6.
If I am not mistaken, the minister didn't refer to anybody by name. He said...
Guilty ones jump up.
Yes.
Guilty ones
am I...
Madam President, you know there's a song from Bob Marley, who the cap fits, let them wear it. Madam President, it was clear to all and sundry, all over the world, where our economy was going. It only seems to be in 2004, in the last quarter of 2014, we moved from 2.5 growth rate to one of a mere 0.2% in the last quarter. Not a word was said, not an advice given by any of the advisors who are now coming into this chamber and speaking. Madam President, it appears that some people have come with vindictive minds to take advantage or to settle scores.
They have grievances.
And grievances. The reality is, Madam President...
Minister, let me just ask you to rephrase what you just said. Just be very careful in making reference to other people's contributions, okay? Thank you.
I apologize, Madam President. Madam President, it took, when in the midst of all that was happening, all the negative things that the world was seeing, all the adjustments that everyone was making, the then Minister of Finance in 2012 2015, I suppose, being advised by certain individuals, actually, I wouldn't say that, actually stood up and said, we are not going into, we are actually not in the economy is not declining, contrary to the figures, but the economy is actually on an expansion path. Madam Chairman, Madam President, clearly we were ill-advised at the time, and the actions that were needed to be taken at the time so that when we came into power in 2016, the situation that we had to confront us and what we had to deal with was so chronic. If it was addressed before, we would have not had to be in this position that we are in. Madam President, you have to remember that in 2010, this government started with a credit balance of over $10 billion. That's what it was. By the time we came in, you will recall, we had to run quickly to the Parliament to increase our borrowing limits. You know why? Because there was no money in the Treasury. All the money had run out. And if that wasn't enough too, Madam President, the money was not only run out in the central bank under the stewardship of certain people who I will not call. At that point in time, they had also raked the National Gas Company of close to $16 billion. 12 billion, 16 billion.
Madam President, I just want to ask the source of the information, please.
Continue. Minister, continue. Please. I want to just, members, may I remind you, please, let us listen to the Minister of Public Utilities, okay? Continue, Minister.
So, Madam President, it is critical and important that we must always put everything into context. And yes, we could hear nice talk and it sounds well, but you have to understand where we came from. Madam President, before I move, because I have a lot to talk about where we want to go in WASA, and I really had a long presentation plan to let you know what I'm doing, but I had to be sidetracked because I had to put this fact straight. Madam President, the contribution was about the foreign exchange and the stabilizing of the system and the controls put in place. Madam President, the legacy of the last regime and the last governor was a total disruption and mashing up of a system that was nicely in place for a very long time, the effects of which we are still experiencing. We are trying to fix a problem that you created. In addition to that, there was a time during that time, I was a banker at the time, and as a matter of fact, I cringed when I realized about a banker supposed to be a confidential person. And confidentiality was the hallmark of what I stand for as a banker. And I remember writing and saying, but what is this? How could my governor, my head banker at the time, go out and make people's public information outside there? It is fate that I have the opportunity to say this now in this house. Because I remember at that time, I was in Africa. And but I remember reading it. And I'm part of this noble profession. Although I know Mr. Senator Small doesn't think my profession is that noble. But I was part of this noble profession that stood ourselves on confidentiality. And you broke the trust. A statutory conversation.
I'm asking everyone, let's just take the temperature down a little bit. Minister, continue, please.
And Madam Chairman, Madam President, I know there's a certain amount of protection I also need in tradition in making my first presentation. It seemed to have gone through the window like everything else. But, you know, it's important for us to remember these things. All right? It is important for us to remember these things. At a time, as I said, when our profession was supposed to be so noble, the things that emanated out of the central bank and the ulterior motives or the motives, whether they were ulterior or not, that was driving those things. During that time, all of a sudden, we recognized DFL, a company that has majority shareholdings or ownings or significant contributions by certain people that are financiers of the other side. They were the ones who benefited tremendously from this so-called change in reserve.
I'm going to ask, I have to caution you a little bit, Minister, in terms of what you are saying. And I'm going to caution you now. I really do not like interrupting maiden contributions. Continue now, Minister.
Madam President, if I might just highlight this point. So I've made that point and I will stop there and apologize. Madam President, to highlight this point further, the PNM government, under the stewardship of Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, has been able to reduce expenditure to a level in the vicinity of $51 billion without creating major disruptions and displacements, and still was able to bring 9,000 new pensioners onto the payroll, pay arrears of salaries to public sector workers, and settle a number of unpaid bills left by the previous administration. All of this, Madam President, on $51 billion. It truly begs the question what the difference of $12 billion was used on. Madam President, the way the People's Partnership government at the time was spending money wild all over the place without regard for process and order reminds me of an old calypso by the Lord Kitchener at the time when he bought his first Jaguar car. And you know, he said, I will park me PP any place, anywhere. They were just dealing without no regards for any process and just spending money wild, or as some people else will say, doing other things with the money. Madam President, in crafting, enough of that. In crafting our response to the prevailing economic challenges, we could have adopted several measures to treat with the situation, such as increasing VAT or raising personal income tax levels, or the much debated issue of devaluation, which I see some people are also advocating. Instead, we decided that the preservation of jobs and the sharing the burden of adjustment across all sectors were of paramount importance. And we make no apologies for stating that in our approach going forward and in dealing with this situation, we place the preservation of jobs as a paramount pillar in our restructuring. As a responsible government that is intent on putting people first, we cannot and will not contribute to the further erosion of the social fabric of our society. It is with this interest that I note the response of some who, whilst acknowledging the need for adjustment, continue to fend it off from themselves and onto others. I have also noted the contributions made by other interest groups, some claiming that the government is mistaken in its attempt to direct the economy, while others assert that even more direction is needed. Yes, others call for market forces to be given free rein. The model of contributions has the frustrating effect of immobilizing actions. As a responsible government, our duty is to find workable solutions and act. We listen, we reason, and then we take decisions that we consider to be in the best interest of the society as a whole. In so doing, we have delivered a series of initiatives which we believe will guide this country to calmer waters, provided all of us make significant adjustments to our attitudes and consumption patterns along the way. The truth is that over the years, Madam President, we, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, have had the good fortunes of benefiting from heavily subsidized energy prices and public utility services, specifically water and electricity. But the sad reality of our current situation is that the government is no longer in a position to foot the bill. As I've said in another place, the gravy train has no more gravy. Madam President, allow me before going forward and before going any further in my contribution to extend my congratulations to the Minister of Finance for his commendable budget presentation and his clarion call for all of us to play our part in changing the paradigm and putting the economy on a sustainable path. One of the fundamental goals outlined in Vision 2030 is that of transforming our institutions, including those delivering public utility services into organizations that better manage with improved access for all. This is indeed the overarching goal of the work done by the Ministry of Public Utilities. As we pursue this vision, the current reality demands that we change the way our public utilities conduct the business of delivering service to the population. Pivotal in this regard would be the provision of a high and consistent quality of service to the population and the promotion of high levels of productivity and operational efficiency, which drive costs down and allow us to do more with less. In this regard, we must ensure that the workplace culture promotes proper work ethics, high service qualities, and supports the tool to drive efficiency. Madam President, our citizens as users of these services must also themselves change. Efficiency and conservation must imbue our consciousness and our actions as the residents of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam President, these are the themes on which my presentation will hinge. But before I proceed, I would like to provide a summary of the budgetary allocations of the Ministry of Public Utilities. Madam President, the Ministry of Public Utilities has been allocated a total of $3.5 billion in 2008 budget, which is marginally higher than the $3.2 billion for the financial year 2017. The last year, the ministry performed well under the public investment program, contrary to what was just last said. And I will dare say that this ministry, basically, we spent over 84.4% of our allocations. This reflects commendably on our capacity to deliver positive outcome for the people of this country. I want to place on record my congratulations to the two former ministers of public utilities, Minister Antwine and Minister Hines, whose drive and passion made this achievement a reality. Before I outline the areas of focus for 2018, I wish to speak on the critical matter of debt financing, of the debt faced by WASA and TNTech. And the reality, Madam Chairman, Madam President, last year we came and we talked about the fact of how much those debt were impacting those institutions, but we were not able to quantify the levels of debt because they were coming from all over the place. I come before you and I stand before you today to say, having done some more research over the year, the debt faced by TNTech and WASA is in the vicinity of $13 billion, with over $7.1 billion to WASA and $5.6 billion to TNTech. The reality is, Madam President, is that those two institutions are technically insolvent, carrying those levels of debt. In addition to the high debt burden, these organizations are also challenged by inefficiencies in their operations and service delivery, as well as in their corporate governance system. Madam President, we just cannot go on this way. Business as usual is not an option. Transformation is an absolute imperative. In recognition of these challenges, I have set 4 areas for the financial year 2018 of priority. 1, debt management. 2, operational efficiency. 3, robust corporate governance. And 4, enhanced customer service. On these 4 pillars, the transformation process will be built, which will result in greater access to public utility services by all citizens at competitive prices in keeping with global standards. Madam President, in describing the transformation process that is before us, I often use the analogy of fixing a fleet of planes while they are in the air. It will have to be done incrementally and with precision, as these agencies must remain fully operational while we reshape and re-engineer them. Madam President, I now turn my attention to the Water and Sewage Authority, WASA. 4 key issues continue to challenge the authority in fulfilling its mandate of providing efficient water and water services to the people of this country. First, WASA has an annual operating deficit due in part to the existing tariff structure of approximately $2.4 billion, which is heavily subsidized by the government through an annual allocation of approximately $2.5 billion for recurrent expenditure and $500 million for capital expenditure. Secondly, the corporate governance system is inefficient and cumbersome, which has precipitated a vicious cycle of cost increase, questionable procurement practices, imprudent borrowing practices, and the deterioration in the efficiency of its operations. Third, WASA is burdened with a high level of non-revenue water, that is, water lost through leaks and other means, which is estimated to be in the vicinity of over 50%. And fourth, Madam President, too many of our citizens have had to endure the authority's slow response time and the relatively poor customer service. These chronic issues cannot continue unabated, but the fixing of WASA cannot happen overnight. It would require a series of incremental moves, innovative thinking, and an intensity of focus on the part of the leadership of the organization. My commitment to the people of Trinidad and Tobago is to work in conjunction with the board of WASA to resolve these issues with a singular focus of providing a high-quality and reliable supply of water to the citizens of this country, which is what they deserve. Madam President, WASA's program of work for 2018 will build on the foundation laid in 2017. It will aggressively address some of the core issues that require our attention in relation to the transformation of the organization and the delivery of a secure and reliable water service supply to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. The reality, Madam President, is that as a country, we distribute and consume more water than we actually require. A study done by a Canadian consulting firm in 2014 provides figures that speak for themselves. The average person in Trinidad and Tobago, according to this study, uses 87 imperial gallons of water per day. Tobago follows closely with a daily consumption rate of 83 imperial gallons. These figures, Madam President, exceed the United Nations recommendation of 11 imperial gallons per person by more than 70 imperial gallons. In other words, the average Trinbagonian utilizes more than 7 times the recommended amount of water on a daily basis. That is why, even as we attempt to fix WASA, we must also actively work to change the way in which we use this most precious resource. We need a paradigm shift throughout the country in everything that we do. But there's more. WASA produces 230 million imperial gallons of water per day. 230 million imperial gallons per day. Given our population size of 1.3 million people, and assuming the astronomically high per capita consumption rate of 87 imperial gallons, we as a nation utilize only 113 million imperial gallons per day. Where then does the extra 117 million gallons of water produced by WASA go? And why does only 38% of the population receive water on a 24/7 basis? Madam President, these statistics point to 2 factors that lie at the core of WASA's inability to provide a reliable and secure water supply to all of Trinidad and Tobago. They are: 1, the untenable water consumption habits of all and sundry, and 2, the loss of water via leaks and illegal connections referred to as non-revenue water. At the same time, the authority's revenue earning potential is hampered by an extremely low tariff structure, $3 per household per day at the highest level. It is at this point, Madam President, that I would just like to correct one small, and I refer to the Newsday today of October the 26th, where it outlines clearly the responsibility of the RIC and their role in ensuring that who sets the rates for water and the work that they are doing to ensure that a proper rate is done. A proper rate is set after the evaluation. Of importance too, Madam President, I just want to draw to the attention Mr. Lee Young's comment in the newspaper when he said the country has, where he said, so far in the current process, this government has been hands-off. So there was a certain statement being made when the debate started by Senator Mark to give the impression that this government was going to increase water prices. That is far from the truth. We do not have the responsibility to do that. It is being done by the RIC, and they will give their evaluation after going through an elaborate process. That being said, I must point out that WASA's last rate review was since 1993, and a similar exercise happened for TNTech in 2006. It should also be noted that we have the second lowest water rate in the Western Hemisphere. What this means, Madam President, is that the government, and by extension, the taxpayer is heavily subsidizing the nation's water supply, resulting in a culture that exhibits little or no respect for this most precious resources. The majority of our citizens, we know, do not get water every day, 24/7. That's a known fact. But the other reality is that those who do get the water, they waste it. So how do we treat with these challenges? The government, through the Minister of Public Utilities, is committed to a plan for improvements in the water and sewerage quality and its attainment of financial viability based on the following core strategies. 1, a reduction in the level of non-revenue water from 50%, from its existing levels of 50%, to a level of about 20% within the shortest space of time. We will be launching this year a rapid response team. We call it the Red Team, of over 500 persons that will be working around the clock to eliminate leaks throughout the country. Of course, they will be working closely with my colleague, the Minister of Works, to ensure that the roads are properly fixed once the leaks are addressed, thus minimizing any inconvenience to the population. The present level of leaks reported that I have on record is in the vicinity of 2,000. And working in conjunction with an aggressive communication strategy, we intend to significantly reduce this number and correct any new leaks brought to our attention by the general public in an expeditious manner. And I will say, Madam President, that this particular approach would require the assistance of all the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, because I can't see it all. So we will be creating new communication channels that will allow you to bring that information to me, and together we will bring and deal with this leak problem in this country once and for all. A team will also be established for the purpose of identifying persons who steal water with the aim of bringing them before the law. And I think we are looking for a name. I think we might call that team the Yellow Team. Number two, the next plan is the expansion of our metering network. This will be implemented with an aim of providing meters to 100% of the authority's industrial and commercial customers this year, while increasing the percentage of metered residential customers from its current level of only a mere 3%. Our goal, financing permitting, would be to have the majority of the country metered within the shortest possible time. 3, an aggressive education campaign focusing on the importance and the need for conservation of our water resources. The figures that I stated earlier made it evident that there is significant wastage of water resources by those who receive a supply. We believe that this is due to a lack of awareness about conservation practices and their potential impact on the sustainability of this resource. In this regard, WASA, in collaboration with the Ministry of Public Utilities, will embark on an aggressive water conservation education program using the diverse media to raise citizens' awareness of the need to use water resources in a sustainable manner. Finally, we will be embarking on a drive to increase the overall production of water, because we recognize that there is a gap and we still need to provide water in some places while we fix what is happening.
Minister, you have 5 more minutes.
In 2018, WASA will be drilling and we'll be drilling 13 wells in the Tucker Valley, and then they'll be doing another 10 wells that are presently under the management of Petrotrin, so that we will be bringing at least, that's 23 wells, and we will be increasing the number of gallons of water onto the system by 10 million gallons per day. We also recognize that we have to fix WASA internally. And therefore, we have an exercise that will be geared towards looking at the internal structure of WASA, looking at their procurement processes, looking at all the things that they are outsourcing. We recognize that we need to fix WASA externally and internally. Madam President, this government, we are moving, and we are moving steadfastly to fixing the port under our Minister of Works. I am confident that my Minister West, will deal with the revenue leakages. And I'm making a commitment here, together with my professional team at the ministry and my cabinet colleagues and the board of directors at WASA, that we are going to address the WASA situation and fix the WASA once and for all. Madam President, as I conclude my maiden address in this House, I must point out, as I did at the beginning of my contribution, that we are in tough economic times that requires us to do things differently, to shift our paradigms, as it were. That shift must involve everyone, and we must do it together as a society. For the line agencies under my purview, it means significantly reducing the financial dependence of the government, achieving realistic levels of efficiency in the operations, ensuring that customers are satisfied with the quality and reliability and affordability of the service, developing and implementing robust corporate governance systems to ensure better management, accountability, and transparency. For the general public, it means utilizing these utility services more efficiently and finding innovative ways to conserve. These measures, once taken conscientiously, will not only save money, they will also produce an environment that will be a win-win situation for all and that will allow us to save money on our energy and our gas bills. Madam President, as the Minister of Public Utilities, I can attest to my ministry's commitment to the necessary transformation. We are fully aware that it will take time, but we have no doubt that the programs and initiatives outlined in my contribution will get us there. The longest journey starts with the first step. Even as we enact the necessary changes, we invite our fellow citizens to join us on this journey towards transformation. It will require changes in attitudes and behaviors and a certain amount of sacrifice from all of us. But even as we embark on this change, we will do well to remember the following words by the Prince of Machiavelli. It must be realized that there is nothing more difficult to plan, more uncertain of success, more dangerous to manage than the establishment of a new order of things. For he who introduced change makes enemies of those who derive advantages from the old order and finds but lukewarm defense among those who stand to gain from the new one. With those words, may we find the wisdom, courage, and strength needed to change course, thus securing the future of our beautiful republic. Madam President, I thank you and the esteemed members. My apologies. I thank you for the esteemed members of this House for your time and attention, and I wish you good day.
Honourable members, permit me to congratulate the Minister of Public Utilities on his maiden contribution in this August House. Who's next? Senator Johnson.
Greetings, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Vice President, I am deeply honored to be afforded the opportunity to be in this august chamber to address you, Mr. Honorable Vice President, and the members of this honorable House, and through you, the national community. My contribution to this discussion would be about the challenges and possible solutions to the problem facing the gaming industry. Mr. Vice President, before I get into the substance of my contribution, please allow me to put on record my deepest and sincerest appreciation and that of the more than 9,000 direct employees and the 30,000 indirect employees to the Honorable Mrs. Kamla Prasad-Bissessar, Senior Counsel, Leader of the Opposition, for affording me the opportunity to be here today. I am here today to speak on the issue of the proposed 100% tax increase and the massive dislocation it would cause. Sitaram, Mrs. Kamla Prasad-Bissessar, Senior Counsel, and may God richly bless you. Like Esther in the Bible, if I perish, I perish, but I come to you, Mr. Vice President, to beseech you for help. Senator Rambarran, thank you for your contribution. I know that you are correct. and that it frightens me a great deal. Thank you, sir. Mr. Vice President, do you know what the atmosphere was like at the headquarters of our union, the Union of Member Club and Lottery Workers, on October 2nd, the night of October 2nd, 2017? Let me tell you, sir, there was weeping and wailing. The general consensus was one of betrayal, bewilderment, and horror. The workers, the majority of them, PNM voters, felt as though they were used for votes, and then, in turn, they were reproached. They were read, but surely they were not ready for this. They felt as if hate was being met out to the ordinary woman and child. My comrades felt disappointed, Mr. Vice President, in a failed government. The perception of the people were the effects of a bait and switch, a creeping dictatorship. Yet again, it appears that the small man in society is being squeezed by a parasitic 1%. The Union of Member Clubs and Lottery Workers believes that the enforcement across the entire industry is the key to more tax revenue from the gaming industry. Not 100% increase in taxes to the private member clubs that currently pay their taxes. My discussion points would be as followed. The flawed information from the Minister of Finance to this House, the 10% tax on all NLCB games, illegal roulettes, and the consistent increase in taxes to the gaming industry. Mr. Vice President, it was never my intention to visit these hallowed chambers to direct public policy as these honorable senators gathered here today. Actually, I was content to be the poor little employee that works as a private members club, as mentioned by the Honorable Minister of Finance in his speech on the Appropriation Bill. However, due to the imminent danger proposed by this 100% tax increase, I'm coerced to be here today. Mr. Vice President, my comrades are being sent home. My comrades are crying, and they do not know where their next meal will be coming from. The situation we face is very grave. Mr. Vice President, sleep has left my eyes. My blood pressure is high, and I cannot find peace. Sir, before I came here today, I understand that a lot was said about me suffering from expert syndrome. Mr. Vice President, my full name is Jabez Johnson. I have been gainfully employed in the gaming industry for the past 16 years. I started off as a part-time cashier, working 2 days for the week. Eventually, I was hired as a full-time staff. Apart from cashing, I would sweep the gaming floor, mop the bar, toilets, and the cash cage because I'm not a proud person. Over time, I was promoted to a supervisor and then to a club manager. Currently, I hold the position of general manager. I'm the holder of 9 CXC passes, some of which are distinctions. I have 4 levels, some are grade A's. I have certification in supervisory management, general management, and managerial accounting. I have an associate degree in management distinction. I also have my first degree in business administration with a concentration in human resources and finance. I'm still at university. My grade point average last term was 3.72. I recently returned from a short-term student exchange program in the States where I checked out a university to begin arrangements for my PhD in an area of study very close to my heart. I am the alternative compliance officer for the with the Financial Intelligence Unit for the club where I work. I receive internal and external compliance training, yet I'm described as suffering from expert syndrome. Mr. Vice President, I have listed my academic qualifications. Please allow me to list for you the human qualifications which I possess. I was born and bred in Factory Road, Digger Martin, behind the factories. We had no running water, and I used to tote water with my hands and on my head to provide my mother with water to cook and for me to be able to go to school. I used to use a latrine or an outhouse because we had no plumbing. My parents died 9 months apart when I was 17 years old, leaving me orphan with 3 siblings to take care of. There was a drug block in my area and people would steal to survive. In other words, Mr. Vice President and Madam President, I am from the ghetto or a slum. I was born destitute, poor, and in abject poverty. I come from a P&M family, as most of my comrades gathered behind me here today. But, Madam President, the only place we found refuge was on this side of the House. This side of the House, Madam President, look at where you all have me and have us standing. My Member of Parliament, because I said I'm from Digger Martin, is the Honorable Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley. Every 5 years he will come for votes, and every year things remain the same. That was until I got my job working full-time at the casino. I was able to run water to my deceased parents' home. After a few months of working at the casino, I was able to fix the leaking roof. And gradually, little by little, I was able to lift myself from the ghetto. Eventually, through working at the casino, I was able to get married and purchase my own home. I have a beautiful little girl and a son to take care of. Madam President, I am a good law-abiding citizen. I am a God-fearing citizen. Please tell me why this finance minister wants to send me back to the ghetto. Why, Madam President, is he disturbing my way of life with this overtaxation? Why he wants to put me on the block to sell drugs? Madam President, I beg you and the good office that you hold to take away this evil tax increase that wants to be unleashed on us. My story is not unusual. This is a story of nearly all the employees in the gaming industry. We are from the ghetto, criminal hotspots, they say, P&M areas. We are working honestly, Madam President, honestly in an industry for an honest salary. Madam President, over the last few days, I received several letters from my comrades. Please permit me to read parts of 2 letters that were sent to me. H.R.Ian Roach, I was always hoping and praying for better days to come. Most of my friends are either dead or are in jail. I grew up in the ghetto. He said, I ain't perfect. I ain't no saint. I did my wrong. I was unemployed for 2 years straight. I almost got locked up. He called the casino name where he worked. He said they changed him. He has been working for almost 1 year now, and he has not been in trouble since. He would always be loyal to the casino, he said. Without his job, he would have to go and check his old friends. He said, I would have to go back to crime. Everybody has to eat a food. Another comrade wrote, her name is Betty. She said, this casino gave me hope when I was at a stage of giving up in life. I was unemployed from the hotel industry. I had no food to feed my 7 children. I had determined to commit suicide, Madam President. She said in her letter, I got dressed and decided I was going on the bus route and jump in front of Maxi to end it. Whilst on her way, she said, she got a call from this casino to come for a job. She said she went to the bus route, but instead of jumping in front of Maxi, she jumped in the Maxi and went to Mapow on Arapita Avenue. Having this job has enabled her to take care of her children. She said it is very tough, and we can all appreciate it is very tough being a single mother of 7 children. Madam President, we have to be careful that this Chavez-type budget might unleash more crime, as has happened in Venezuela. Look at the economy there. Is the legacy of this hard-working Minister of Finance going to be the memory of how he started us down the streets of Caracas? I ask you, Madam President, does he want to turn our beloved country to that island or that state, Venezuela? Madam President, as a woman, I appeal to you. I appeal to the two leading ladies in our beloved country, Mrs. Rima Harris-Singh Kamona and Mrs. Sharon Rowley. We beseech you, ladies, please help us. To Mrs. Susan Williams-Imbert, thank you for all the help you gave to the casino ladies from Lee Platte Village along Circular Road on Diwali Day. I appeal to all the women of Trinidad and Tobago. These women who work in casinos are just as you. They have children. Look at what evil will be visited on them with this 100% tax increase. Is it right that we put Betty and her 7 children on the streets? Due to the constant threat on our jobs, Madam President, we, the employees of the casino, formed the Union of Member Clubs and Lottery Workers. After much insistence from my colleagues, my comrades, I agreed to hold the position of Vice President of the Union, a position I hold with high esteem. But today, Madam President, we feel like Jesus running from King Herod. We believe that the king should be looking for the five-star casino in the East instead of trying to eliminate an entire industry. Public perception, Madam President. There are many persons who have watched casino-type movies that involve extortion, money laundering, heavy rulers, nudity, exaggerated stories of both winning and losing, sensational stories of the problem gambler. That's an infamous person right now. A lot of people believe that everybody who visits a private members club is a problem gambler. Ms. Jane Nikinen, in her working paper, The Global Regulation of Gambling, a general overview, noted that the majority of studies portray gambling problems concerning individuals and not society. Jim Oxford also noted, in percentage terms, the incidence of gambling-related problems in the population is considered low. However, as a union, we do not throw caution to the wind. The Union of Member Clubs and Lottery Workers has heard the voices of the religious leaders. Yes, we have listened to the concerned persons and the Bankers Association, to the NGOs that provide support for families. As a union, we recognize that there could be a fallout from gambling. As a union, we are fully in support of the enactment of the Gambling, Gaming, and Betting Control Bill 2016. Actually, Madam President, for the past 12 years, we have been advocating the need for regulation to our industries. We understand that some persons are opposed to gambling in any form, and their opinion is respected. However, the truth is, Madam President, gambling has been part of our society since before I was born. We have had WAPI and Bushwewe. In the United States of America and in other parts of the world, they have legalized the appropriate gaming houses. They have legislation and allow them to contribute towards the public purse as tax revenue. The difference between the United States and Trinidad is enforcement, diligent enforcement, Madam President. Trinidad and Tobago, contrary to popular belief in the media out there, has already been collecting taxes from this gambling sector. Now, Madam President, not next year, not March 31st, 2018, but now is the right time to enact the Gambling Control Bill 2016 to regulate our industry. This bill will allow for transparency, accurate data gathering. It will address the social ills. It will give the government of the day predictability. It will provide an orderly approach for the receipt of tax revenue. As part of the Gambling Control Bill, there is a rehabilitation fund. This fund will address, in a holistic and coordinated way, the issue of the problem gambler. There's also the development fund as part of that bill. That fund will provide support services, social programs, charitable causes, and money for education and culture. In that bill as well, Madam President, there are regulations that will support the work of the Financial Intelligence Unit and assist with dealing with money laundering and the financing of terrorism. Again, Madam President, as a union, we fully endorse the passage of the Gambling Control Bill. However, Madam President, the Minister of Finance, through his ministry, the Ministry of Finance, of which the Inland Revenue Division is part and parcel, must do his part to collect his taxes. He must collect his taxes from the industry as a whole, and not just from the private member club that pay. Increasing the tax burden on a few private member clubs that have been honest and forthright and pay their taxes is not the way. Shivanan Diopasar, tax manager from Deloitte accounting firms, noted, non-compliance should not be the reason to raise taxes. He is an expert, Madam President. He said if taxes are too high, it could provide an incentive to be clever in non-compliance. It can actually push the activity of gambling into the hands of organized crime. That was quoted in the Business Day, Newsday newspapers, Thursday, October 19th. Enforcement in the industry as a whole would provide more tax revenue for this government. Madam President, could I be allowed to explain my first point with flawed information? We have to look at this budget, Madam President, and be sure that the hardships contained within it are justified and based on sound economics and facts. We have to be sure of that, Madam President. The Finance Minister in his 2016 contribution claimed that the gambling industry is a $16 billion industry. So that was last year. He claimed $16 billion. That was reported by Ms. Ria Tate in the Trinidad Express newspaper. In May this year, in the mid-year budget review, in the other place, the exact date was May 10, 2017, he said, notwithstanding the arguments by some players in the industry, to the contrary, he knew that the gambling industry is a $10 billion industry. So 1 year is 16, next year is 10. In this budget, Madam President, in the same year, 2017, he is saying that he knows for a fact that the gambling industry is estimated at 15 to 20 billion. So he is changing his figures. 1 year, he is saying 16. Next year, he is saying 10. And within the same year, he is saying 20. Madam President, he is guessing. He does not know for certain. Madam President, I am saying, and we support that the finance minister, thank you, Madam President, that the finance minister get his facts right. The only way he can get his facts right is by passing the gambling control bill that would put a gaming commission in place that would provide him with accurate information. Madam President, something very kicksy happened, or very funny. As we know, based on me being somebody who suffers from expert syndrome, apparently Google is a popular search engine on the other side. If you were to do a search of the profit made by all casinos last year, you would realize they made $979 million. Since the finance minister is stating that we are a $20 billion industry, that means that our little casino industry made nearly 3 times that of Las Vegas. Madam President, that is preposterous. That does not make sense. At the end of the day, if that were the case and we were 3 times as profitable as Las Vegas, then there would be no need to tax anyone in this budget. All the finance minister will have to do is to open casinos. Full stop. That's all he has to do in this country, open casinos. And since he is an expert and has not stepped a foot in a gambling house, then he could be the minister as well of casinos. Because at the end of the day, Madam President, his figures are wrong. I believe that he also erred in his record, his checking of the amount of private members' clubs in Trinidad and Tobago. But before I even get into that, Madam President, do you know that the members' club, the private members' clubs, are governed by acts and agencies of the state in Trinidad and Tobago? They are governed by the Registration of Club Act, the Financial Intelligence Unit, the Board of Inland Revenue, the Police Service, Customs and Excise Division. People in the public domain have been stating that the clubs are illegal. Madam President, if we are illegal, how are we governed by so much acts and so much agencies of the state? The Financial Intelligence Unit uses the following laws to govern the activities of private members' clubs. The Financial Obligations Regulations 2010-2011, the Proceeds of Crime Act 2009, the Anti-Terrorism Act 2010-2011. They even use something from the Central Bank Anti-Money Laundering and Counter Financing of Terrorism Guidelines. They also use the Financial Action Task Force 40 and 9 recommendations. Madam President, before a club could even receive their license from the court, they must present the court with their receipt from Inland Revenue Division, showing that they have paid their taxes. They must present a receipt for their $500,000 bond. As part of the process of being a club, a private members club with gambling, a licensing committee must come from the court and visit the establishment. They must visit the building. They would review that all the taxes have been paid and that all the books are in order. Before a club is even anywhere near open, they must be compliant with the Financial Intelligence Unit. Madam President, private member clubs with casino-style games are not illegal in this country. What we are saying is push for increased regulation, bring the Gambling, Gaming and Betting Control Bill in effect. Madam President, it was very amusing to learn that the Honorable Minister requested from the Police Commissioner that he go and check and see the number of private members club in the country. Obviously, the good and astute police commissioner would have requested from each police station the number of private member clubs in the country. The Prime Minister said, not the Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance has said over and over there are hundreds and hundreds of private members clubs. Madam President, that is not correct. What we have learned is that the police, in their deliberation, went and counted every building that said they are private member club and say, okay, private members club, yes, tick, tick, tick. When in fact, these private members clubs do not have gambling. For example, in the Sinclair area, they said there were 7 private members clubs. They said Harvard Sports Club, the Trinidad Cricket Club, and so forth. You know, Madam President, none of the 7 members clubs that they listed for Sinclair actually have gambling on it. Not one. So clearly the information from the Honorable Minister of Finance is incorrect. Also, Madam President, I went and I checked the Financial Intelligence Unit, their website, to see, okay, probably didn't check the clubs with the police commissioner. He went to the Financial Intelligence Unit. They have 91, Madam President, 91 registered private members club on their records as at September 30th, 2017. And this, Madam President, is also not correct. The reason why this is not correct is because some of the clubs have no gambling. Queen's Park Cricket Club, the Clydesdale Club, the Trinidad Yacht Club, Trinidad Union Club. These clubs have no gambling, none whatsoever. Also, Madam President, of that 91, several clubs have been closed. Brita Recreation Club, Club Fantasy Members Club, Pegasus Members Club, Royal Vegas Members Club, Sands Private Members Club, Sportsman Private Members Club slots are all closed. So again, the information recorded by the Financial Intelligence Unit is not correct. Yes, Madam President, all casinos are members clubs, but not all members clubs, Madam President, are casinos. Madam President, it is clear that the Honorable Finance Minister received wrong information. We believe as a union he was kidnapped by those technocrats in the Ministry of Finance. And now, Madam President, we, the casino employees, have to pay for his ransom with our jobs. With our jobs, Madam President, and that is not correct. Madam President, at the end of the day, did you know that he had the financial accounts for 2 casinos? Up to 2015, 2 casinos. Madam President, we are asking that the Finance Minister adhere to the tenets of good faith, equitable treatment, that he conforms to the true statement that we believe that he is. He has partnered with us in the Joint Select Committee meeting. We have sent letters outlining our position on critical issues that affect our comrades. We are saying that he has promised, yes, he has, with that grin on his face, he has promised to enact the legislation passed. Oh, sorry, Madam President.
Senator, once again, I have to interrupt a maiden contribution, but that is out of order. We do not speak about members of Parliament in any sort of that derogatory manner. Yes.
I apologize, Madam President. I stand corrected. At the end of the day, Madam President, we believe that the passing of the Gambling Control Bill would allow the Gaming Commission to be enacted and it would allow for the receipt of accurate and unbiased information. My second point, Madam President, the 10% tax on all NLCB cash winnings. Do you know, Madam President, that the National Control Board only enjoys 40% of the playway market? In his speech, the minister said that foreign, Chinese, and nationals are involved in gambling in this country. I will go further, Madam President, enlighten this House that the illegal playway market is controlled by foreigners. Madam President, in his budget statement, the Finance Minister said that there will be an introduction of a 10% tax on all cash winnings, and it will be effective by December 1st, 2017. It is expected he will receive $370 million from the NLCB annually. However, Madam President, no consideration was given to games that do not pay cash. Now, the ministry is scrambling to figure that one out. What about the small winners? If you win back your $5 or $10, you would have to pay tax on that. Madam President, do you know that with this 10% tax, the NLCB is set to lose 70% of its revenue annually? That was quoted in the Sunday Express, October 22nd, 2017, page 7. How much tax revenue would you really make if you lose 70% of your revenue? Madam President, what is the purpose of this tax? Is this tax supposed to drive the playway business further away from the National Lotteries Control Board? At every corner, there's an illegal playway booth, illegal playway person paying 34 to 1, 37 to 1. The mega board pays 70 to 1. Do you know why this error occurred, Madam President? To use the words of the esteemed chairman of the NLCB, Mr. Marvin John Schiller, they did not consult. Madam President, this is what he is saying. The cousin of our Honorable Prime Minister is saying, who worked on the campaign with the Honorable Minister, he is saying that he did not consult him.
Senator, please, don't bring the relatives of members into the debate, okay? All right. Yes.
Sorry again, I beg your forgiveness. I'm a bit new, so please forgive me. Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, we do not believe in this tax, this 10% tax on everything. What we are saying, tax the instruments or the products of the NLCB that pay huge cash winnings, the lotto, the bigger cash payout items, tax those. And Madam President, we are also asking that the Honorable Minister consult with us. We are not against him, we are not against taxes. What we are saying, meet with us and treat with us and allow us to live, allow us to be in existence. Madam President, we are talking about GTech. Do you know that 350 million scarce US dollars is paid to GTech for blowing balls? GTech, Madam President, 350 million scarce US dollars is paid to them for blowing balls out of a box. The finance minister made a contribution another place and said that foreign exchange is being leaked out of this country daily by casino owners. Madam President, I was told that a major leak of foreign exchange through this $350 million, unfortunately, it's the government. Madam President, as part of the substantive contract with GTech IGT, they were supposed to transfer technology, Madam President. Madam President, up to now, not a single calculator has been transferred to this beloved country. All that has been transferred is $350 million US annually. Madam President, illegal roulette machines, they are everywhere. As you may have noticed, I have a cold. I was a bit frightened yesterday on going to the hospital that I would have seen an illegal roulette machine in the hospital. I was scared, Madam President. They're at every corner, every bar, every restaurant. The Honorable Minister, Madam President, in his contribution, said that he is going to apply a flat tax of $120,000 to these roulette machines. He said that they are amusement machines, and I'm paraphrasing. Madam President, vulnerable persons, children go to restaurants to buy food, yet still we have illegal roulette machines in restaurants. Madam President, we need to remember the children of our society. Roulette machines are not amusement machines. By definition, an amusement machines, which bars are allowed to have a cap payout of $5,000. The roulette machine, these illegal roulette machines, these Chinese illegal roulette machines do not have a capped payout. They can pay anything. They are not for amusement. These roulette machines have contributed to the decline of the private members' club's income. Decline, Madam President, because at the end of the day, everybody, including children, are running to play them. Madam President, the finance minister did not consult us before making his edict about this 120 flat tax. We are asking, Madam President, who stands to benefit? It is not the casino employees. Who really stands to benefit from all these institutions or buildings with illegal roulette machines becoming de facto casinos? We talk about proliferation in the industry. It's unchecked, it's wild, it's crazy. But by legislating and by saying, as the Honourable Minister said, 120,000 flat tax, he is going to make these houses casinos. That is not what we want. What we are saying, bring the gambling, the gaming and betting control bill to the House, enact legislation and control the industry. Madam President, the club I worked for paid $15 million in taxes this year. $8 million in machine and table taxes, $7 million in PAYE, VAT, custom duties, etc., plus $2.5 million in bonds. This year has been a very hard year for us due to the economic downturn and sluggish growth. We don't know who caused it, but economic downturn and sluggish growth. Now we are being asked to pay an additional $8 million. Madam President, 100% tax increase to our core components of our operation. When the tax started, Madam President, on gaming machines, electronic gaming machines, it was $500. Consistently, the tax has risen. It's now $12,000. Over 2,400% increase. The Honorable Minister wants to double that figure. Madam President, would mean 4,800% increase in taxes to the core components. It's no wonder the smaller members clubs have started shutting their doors. Madam President, we have a recent example in Venezuela where the Honorable Mr. Chavez increased the taxes by 40%, and that killed off the entire industry. 100,000 workers lost their jobs. Madam President, we do not want to be like that. Dr. Darren Conrad, he's an expert. He's a lecturer and deputy dean at the University of the West Indies. He said in his UE Post-Budget Forum that we have gone on to implement a very poor fiscal consolidation plan. We are taking a limited one-dimensional approach, increasing taxes and lowering expenditure. He went on to say what we are doing is very dangerous and could have a significant impact on poor households, households we come from. It will constrain investment and will have a long-lasting negative impact. He said, look at the example of Zimbabwe. Madam President, everybody believes, and that was mentioned by another expert in the gaming industry, Mr. Eugene Christiansen. He said everybody believes casinos are super profitable. They are the magical money pumps. They are not governed by economic laws. Madam President, casinos are closing around us every day. He mentioned as taxes increase, capital investment falls. What we are saying, Madam President, do not increase taxes to our industry. In summary, Madam President, we are saying simply, we want to keep our jobs. We want to feed our children. We have tried to access farming lands and agricultural loans, and have been repeatedly turned down by all agencies of the state. We are in a recessionary period. Jobs are hard to find. We do not want to become dependent on the state for social services. We do not want, as an industry, to be a drain on the country's resources. We want to remain as productive citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. We advocate the enactment of the Gambling, Gaming, and Betting Control Bill. This will correct flawed information received by the Finance Minister and anyone in the House. Tax only the lotto and large cash payouts. Do not squeeze the small man. Do not encourage the unhindered proliferation of de facto casinos by legislating roulette machines, illegal roulette machines. We are asking the Finance Minister and his representative consider reducing the current gaming tax to encourage employers to rehire staff that were released or dismissed earlier this year, prior to the budget and post-budget. We are saying push for enforcement and collect taxes from the entire industry. Honorable members, putting aside all jokes, all picong and the facets of our debate, please remember, when you sign this law, this repressive, Madam President, excessive and regressive 100% increase taxation to our core competencies, our core facets of our operation, with the stroke of your collective pen, on December 31st this year, you will contribute, yes, Madam Minister, you will contribute to putting thousands of young persons on the streets.
Senator, you have 5 more minutes.
Thank you, Madam President. We are saying, Madam President, that by signing that collective pen, you all will contribute to putting thousands of young, productive people, young people, on the breadline. We are saying we are casino employees. Yes, Madam President, we are proud casino employees. We are people too. Madam President, I didn't want to take any time from my contribution. But since I have a few more seconds, I will reply to a contribution made earlier, I believe it was yesterday, by the Honorable Senator Faris Al-Rari. He said that we are coerced into coming before you or protesting. Madam President, I ask you that you will look in the public gallery and you would see that it is full of young people who are here of their own free volition. They are not coerced in any way. Many of them came from since 6 o'clock this morning getting ready just to be here in this honorable house to pay support to this contribution made on their behalf. I would like to express my sincere thanks to them, and I would like to let you know that they are in no way coerced. I am here on my own free choice because I value my job. I do not want to be unemployed. And Madam President, I thank you. You are very gracious.
Honourable Senators, let me congratulate Senator Johnson on his maiden contribution. Minister of Labour and Small Enterprise Development.
Madam President, it is indeed my privilege to rise and address this honorable House in this third debate. And I've listened with great interest to the various contributions made by my fellow senators. Some I may agree with, others I definitely don't. But it is undeniable, Madam President, that this government led by Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley, is in fact delivering on commitments and promises made. But Madam President, before I get into the gist of my contribution, I would like to take just a few minutes to respond to certain statements that Senator Jwala Rambarran would have placed within the records of this honorable House. I want to take the opportunity, Madam President, to remind my senatorial colleague that the problem this country is experiencing with our foreign exchange began with him. It began with him when he interfered with the distribution system of foreign exchange in this country. And I would like to ask him whether or not he did that to facilitate DFL, the owner of which is a well-known financier of the UNC.
Madam President, 46.6, imputing improper motives.
Yes. Minister, you will have to present that in another manner. Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. I shall rephrase it. It is very well known in this country that our foreign exchange problems began with the former governor of the central bank, who has joined us in this August chambers. And we are still suffering the effects of his tinkering with a system that worked.
46.6. 46.4, offensive language.
No, and
about members of
46.
the chamber.
46.6.
She's still imputing improper motives, madam.
Actually, members, the minister is making a statement about something that has happened. I don't think she's imputing improper motives at this stage. She's merely making a statement of fact. Statement of fact, seeing that you seem to be interrogating me, Senator Amin, I think she's speaking about the changing of some foreign currency regulations. That's what I understand. Okay?
Someone is in control here, you know.
Thank you, Madam President. I also want to ask the goodly senator if he recalls defying and disobeying an instruction of the cabinet of this country.
No, Minister, please, take a seat. Listen, Senator Rambarran has made a contribution as a senator in this chamber, and therefore the standing orders apply. So that the way your presentation is being made is against the standing orders. So I would ask you, please, to either make your presentation in a different way.
I am guided, Madam President. Madam President, I think I have made the point that persons must not come to this August House with a holier-than-thou attitude, accusing this government.
Minister, please, that is not in accordance with the standing orders, and therefore I ask you to move on, please.
Madam President, I am guided. Madam President, you know, I am convinced that our detractors on the other side would stop at nothing to tarnish the work of this government. I am convinced, though, Madam President, that in the spirit of the recent Festival of Lights, that we all participate in one way or the other, that the PNM's shining light will continue to dispel the forces of darkness of evil. Madam President, I am sure that many of us will be familiar with the old expressions. Our grandparents always taught us that in these hard times, you have to cut and fit the things to work. There's another familiar saying, do not hang your hat higher than your hand can reach. Those were principles upon which we were all brought up. And Madam President, this statement is very apt when we consider the budget presentation made by the Honorable Minister of Finance. Madam President, permit me to congratulate my esteemed colleague, the Honorable Minister of Finance, and his team of honest, hard-working, and loyal public officers who run this country. And many of us will recall when there was an 1818 tie in this country, and there was a flux existing. It was public officers that kept the wheel of governance rolling in this country. So we must be very careful how we castigate public officers. All these persons in suits in this August chambers, they are all public officers.
42-9, Madam President, misrepresentation of speech of a member of the
Senator Obika, please. The minister is making a presentation. She has not done that. Okay? And also, what you're saying is you're not standing on a standing order. Okay? Minister, continue.
Thank you kindly, Madam President. Madam President, public officers, in my former incarnation, I represented public officers. I know how they work. In my present capacity as minister, I work with the finest bunch of public officers, hardworking. They go beyond the call. And I felt really pain sitting here and hearing the new senator talking about the public officers kidnapping the Minister of Finance and encouraging him to place certain burdens on them. So I would just want to caution my friend in that regard. Madam President, I would also like to take the opportunity to commend our Minister of Planning and Development and her team for their input into this budget. Madam President, I also wish to commend the Honorable Prime Minister for his resilience that he has demonstrated in steering the ship of state through these turbulent times. He has been a beacon of light through which, over the last 24 months, as we as a people, collectively, we have weathered the storms. And I wish to commend him for his continued sober, steady, and courageous leadership that he offers this country. I am also grateful for the confidence that he has bestowed in me in the capacity of Minister of Labor and Small Enterprise Development. In that context, Madam President, I would be focusing my presentation on 5 platforms. Madam President, the engine behind the success of any organization, we can all agree, is really the employees. According to Steve Jobs, the only way to do great work is to love what you do. This powerful statement reflects the dedication of the staff at the Ministry of Labor and Small Enterprise Development, who have been working tirelessly with me to re-engineer our core functions as we improve service delivery to all our stakeholders. Madam President, I also wish to place on record my deepest appreciation to all our social partners, to business, to labor, and to the International Labour Organization, without whose collaboration we would not have been able to cross many of the mountains that we have crossed. Madam President, I want to look very briefly at the state of the labor market. The last 2 years have posed significant challenges to our economy, undoubtedly. We have witnessed firsthand the impact of the declining world energy prices on our economy and, by extension, the labor market of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam President, the decline resulted in the closure of industries in the energy sector and has contributed significantly to the slowdown in economic activity in the non-energy sector. Madam President, due to the concerted efforts of this government to stimulate job opportunities through the development program and other avenues, we have seen a progressive decline in the unemployment rate from 4.4% in the second quarter of 2016 to 4.0% in the third quarter of 2016, and then to 3.6% in the fourth quarter of 2016. We are not contented with these figures, as we know that our consistent efforts can improve the unemployment situation even further. Madam President, we are also seeing a glimmer of hope, a light at the end of the tunnel in the retrenchment rate, where I have received, in accordance with the law of this country, once an employer is retrenching 5 or more workers, that employer has a legal responsibility to inform the Minister of Labor and Small Enterprise Development. Madam President, I have received notices of 1,134 persons to be retrenched over the period January 17 to September 2017, compared to 2,384 persons for the same period in 2016. Madam President, for the period September 2015 to September 2017, I have received official notices to date of 4,829 persons to be retrenched. So that, Madam President, I was a bit confused when I heard the Member of Parliament stand in the other house and made a statement that 25,000 persons have lost their jobs already. It is very deceitful to mislead this House or the other House with data for which the source is not quoted and therefore cannot be verified. Nonetheless, Madam President, for me, one job lost is one too many. Madam President, we have therefore committed to assisting unemployed and retrenched workers through the implementation of a 10-point plan on unemployment, details of which I will share with this Honorable House shortly. But, Madam President, our difficulties in the labor market, it is not unique. In its World Employment and Social Outlook report for 2017, the International Labour Organization estimates that the global unemployment rate will rise modestly in 2017 to 5.8%, up from 5.7% in 2016. This represents an additional 3.4 million persons unemployed globally, bringing total unemployment to just over 201 million persons in 2017. Madam President, and yet, despite all these massive dislocation taking place all over the world, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, we here, under the astute leadership of Dr. Rowley, we have managed to claim a notable success. Madam President, we have not, as a government, indicated that we can no longer maintain the public service. We have maintained a steady level of employment in the public service, unlike all over the world. Madam President, this ministry, of which I have the honor to lead, has a very clear legislative agenda. But Madam President, I want to point out that this country, when it comes to increase innovation, we have improved. Let us not knock ourselves too much. Let's look at the positives also. We have improved in 1 year from a ranking of being number 94 for the period 2016 to 2017 to number 83 for the 2017-2018 on the World Economic Forum's Global Competitive Index. It is my sincere belief that with the recently constituted National Productivity Council, which is tasked inter alia with promoting and developing greater productivity, quality, competitiveness, we are well on our way to improve our lot. And at this point in time, Madam President, I would want to make a call to everyone in this country. We have a serious problem with productivity and also work ethic. And I want to make a call for all of us to put our collective shoulders to the wheel and to work harder if we are to get out from where we are. Madam President, there's still a long way to go, but with every challenge comes opportunity, the opportunity to innovate, to improve efficiency, and to work together for the national good of this country. The ministry which I lead is committed to seizing these opportunities to effect our core mandate of industrial peace, decent work, small enterprise development, and equal opportunities for all. In this context, Madam President, I wish to briefly share on a few areas of work which the ministry has been undertaking to place our economy on a sustainable path in keeping with the National Development Strategy Vision 2030. And these I will address, if time permit me, under 5 broad areas. 1, labor legislation reform. 2, employment promotion. 3, small business development. 4, promotion of industrial peace. And 5, promotion of rights and responsibilities in the workplace. Madam President, whenever I address the topic of labor legislation reform in Trinidad and Tobago, I am explicit to state that it is a process which requires stakeholder engagement in a very genuine manner at each step of the process. This consultative approach, which has defined our government's approach to legislative policy reform, as well as decision-making, is diametrically opposed to the method used by the previous administration. And Madam President, this was evident when the other side introduced the Industrial Relations Amendment Bill on May Day in 2015 without absolutely any form of consultation with labor or business, and that stirred a great deal of protest. I think it was history-making where you had business and labor protesting against the action of the last administration. That was an insult to the working class of our country. Madam President, one of my colleagues on the other side in the other house mentioned that I am hiding. I don't know at 5 feet 9.5 how much I can hide. But perhaps you would feel better if I shouted from the rooftops that in 20 months I have held 13 stakeholder consultations and on 9 out of 10 pieces of priority labor laws identified by this government in this current term. How many did he host as minister in the Ministry of Labor and Small Enterprise Development? My friend on the other side might feel better if I boasted that arising from these consultations, we have submitted to Cabinet 4 draft policy position papers, which would inform the amendment of the Industrial Relations Act of 1972 as amended, the Retrenchment and Severance Benefit Act, the Cooperative Societies Act, and the Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies Act. Madam President, together with the competent team of public officers at the Ministry of Labor and Small Enterprise Development, we have been working quietly and diligently to fulfill our legislative mandates.
Minister. Honourable Senators, at this stage we will suspend. We will return at 5 p.m. Minister, you have utilized